YouTube vinyl community, Beatles fans, random people on the internet, my name is Giggens, and we are here today to talk about The Beatles, Meet the Beatles, released January 20th, 1964. You're celebrating your 53rd birthday, man. That's pretty cool. So, this album is extremely important, little known in the Beatles' career and pop culture history. Let's just jump into it. So, Beatle Mania in the UK in 1963 was on fire. It was this full, unstoppable force. And as much as the Beatles wanted to come to America because they were doing so well in Europe, they were afraid to come to America because they didn't want to come over without a hit, or at least being moderately popular. Because they'd seen what happened to other British acts. So many other British acts that were humongously popular in England went to America and failed miserably, and either came back and their career was done, or they came back and it just nothing really clicked ever again. They were scared of that. So they kept sending songs over to America. They sent She Loves You over there, did nothing. They sent some other songs over there, and all these smaller labels picked them up, like Tolly and Swan, and eventually VJ, which put out Introducing the Beatles, which was the album that preceded this one. But nothing happened. And then all of a sudden, they come up with I Want to Hold Your Hand. And some people say that this song was written specifically for an American audience. Some people say it was just a song that they had laying around. Some people say that it was just the next step in their songwriting evolution, and timing just happened to be on their side, and it just blew up from there. So, I Want to Hold Your Hand came out in America, and it just took off. Capitol got behind this gigantic media blitz of, the Beatles are coming. It was like this, they called it the British invasion. Just promoting the hell out of the Beatles, who were going to be on the Ed Sullivan Show pretty soon. And that was it. I mean, they hit the Ed Sullivan Show, and literally the music world changed overnight. It's crazy to think how important this album is in pop culture's history. This album in 1964 alone sold over 4 million copies, just in that 1 year alone. And I'll be honest, right off the bat, I love the American albums. It's what I grew up on. This, I think, was one of the first Beatles albums I ever listened to when I was a kid. So, I know it's not the way the Beatles intended the albums to be made, but I think Capitol did a really interesting thing with making their own compilations and using unique mixes sometimes. Some people loathe these things. I love them. I prefer the American Rubber Soul over the British one. Just my opinion. If you don't like it, that's okay. That's fine. So the tracks on this album, I Want to Hold Your Hand, wasn't on an album in England. It was a single. The next song, Oh, I Saw Her Standing There, was on Please Please Me. This Boy, excuse me. This Boy was a B-side to I Want to Hold Your Hand, and then literally the rest of the album is with the Beatles. The cover is the same as with the Beatles, except there's a blue tint. And this is a little bit more red. Sometimes it's greenish, sometimes it's brownish. There are also so many different variants of this album, with giving credits to George Martin or having songs credited to ASCAP or BMI. There's a lot. I'm not going to go into all of them, but this particular copy is a mono copy, original, on the old Capitol Rainbow Color Band. This is all ASCAP except for I Want to Hold Your Hand, which is BMI. Holy moly. So, so what I wanted to do was something obvious. I want to do a track-by-track analysis and try to make this album sound fresh and exciting again. Even though it is, I feel like it's been reviewed to death because it's the Beatles, and it's really hard to review the Beatles because it's just been done so many times. But there aren't a whole lot of reviews for this thing on YouTube. That's kind of why I'm on the internet. So, hey, let's do it. I Want to Hold Your Hand. The build-up, the heart-racing build-up, this intro, it creates this propulsive energy that only lets up just for a little bit during the pre-choruses to just send you right back into that stop-break rhythm. It's just this throw of musical elation. It was the introduction to the U.S. market of the Beatles. It's the musical equivalent of a smile. It doesn't let up. It's this harmony meets rock means foreign familiarity, a concoction of musical generations that, bands forever after that would drool over in envy, trying to emulate what the Beatles did with that song and how they flipped the world over with just one track. It's crazy. I saw her standing there with that 1, 2, 3, 5 or four, it's just this shuffle rock and roll rhythm. Paul's doing this awesome vocal. Ringo's beating the crap out of his drums. George has a fantastic lead solo, and it's got the screaming, it's got the head bobbing, woo stuff. I mean, the classic Beatles sound. This Boy was the B-side to "I Wanna Hold Your Hand," and it's a tender waltz about yearning for lost love. John's got this extremely powerful vocal in the middle eight, the bridge. And the song itself is the beginning of what became a very iconic three-part harmony from John, Paul, and George. That eventually in later years they would absolutely slay. I hate using that word, but they would just do so awesomely well on songs like "Because." I mean, the instrumental version of that track is fantastic. And underneath all of this is Ringo doing this calming shuffle, just keeping the song alive. It won't be long. I mean, so you got this Boy moment where it's kind of calm and quiet, but then it won't be long, just busts back in with this calm response, chorus vocals, Ringo again beating the hell out of his hi-hat and snare. George has these hummable guitar fills, and I mean, it just sticks in your head forever. More of that stop-break rhythm, just that Bo Diddley feel. Heart-pounding, sweaty, club-type rocker. And I really feel like that's an essential early Beatles track. I mean, that is quintessential early Beatles for me. All I gotta do, really cool, seamless transitioning between different time signatures, like, not even missing a beat, ha ha ha. These soaring background vocals on this confident rocker that reassures the listener that no matter how far away John Lennon is, he's only a phone call away. And it ends with a humming solo. I mean, that's pretty cool too. All My Loving closes out side one, and Paul's voice on this track is absolute perfection. The whole strummy, straight-ahead love song. This time exchanging a phone call for a letter, saying how, just gonna write about you. It's just one of those songs for the ages. It's just classic early Beatles. Cannot go wrong with that song. Side 2 opens with "Don't Bother Me," George's first debut on an album. It's moody, dissonant. It really allows for this serious Beatle to, showcase his songwriting, and at this point, I would say it was just as good as Lennon and McCartney. He once said, Ringo once said, it's hard to get a song in when you've got Lennon and McCartney in your band. "Little Child" is a harmonica-driven track, and it really pumps the energy non-stop. It doesn't let up at all, even for a breath during the maniacal harmonica solo. It's just, you can imagine him playing this song at the Cavern Club and just people going crazy, dancing around, having a great time. "Till There Was You" is a song from the Music Man musical, and I absolutely adore this song. I think it's great. I think it's a really sweetly sung song. Paul does an excellent vocal on this, and George's classical style acoustic guitar mixed with Ringo's bongos, and the overall production of the song itself creates an atmosphere that makes you believe every word that's Paul saying. And that final note where he just holds out his, he holds out that long note, "Till There Was You." I can't sing, but you know what I'm talking about. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. What's next? I dropped me paper, you see. "Hold Me Tight." That's a leftover from the "Please Please Me" album. And, I think what I love the most about this song is that it features hand claps the entire time as another rhythm. It's this steam engine-like power that can't be turned off. It's Ringo's thunderous tom-tom drums in that middle part. It's got these bright, sunny vocals, these harmonies. Paul's giving it all he's got with these vocals. And, especially during that "It's You" part. I mean, it's a smile on your face the whole time. And again, another song you can imagine being played at the Cavern Club. "I Wanna Be Your Man" was originally written for the Rolling Stones, and this is easily one of Ringo's best vocals ever. And they are just firing on all engines on this song. They're just having a great time rocking out and screaming during the solo. I mean, and Ringo's vocals on this song are fantastic. Very passionately, very soulfully sung. Really one of the best songs he's ever done. And, then the album closes Not a Second Time. It's kind of a moody, you know, losing relationship-y kind of song, and it kind of abandons the happy-go-lucky, free spirit feel of the rest of the album. But I feel like it's kind of a good closer because it does have a closing feel to it, especially how it fades out the way it does. But it's also one of the few songs of the album I think just solely focuses on John's voice. I don't think there's other songs on the album like that. They at least have like a background vocal from the other guys. Here's the back cover, if you've never seen it before. But wow, I mean, this album, I mean, being so far away from it now, 53 years into the future. When this album was first released, I mean, it might be hard to fully realize how monumental the impact was. The Beatles' music and arrival in America literally shook up everything. I mean, it scared the hell out of established bands. It established an identity of what writing your own songs could be like and being yourself. It inspired millions of people to pick up a guitar and go into their garage with their friends and start writing their own stuff. You know, that mentality didn't exist before. You know, people wrote for other people. That's just what it was. And it still is to a certain degree, but so many more bands got to be themselves because of hearing the Beatles for the first time. It's pretty crazy. You know, Meet the Beatles, for me, is more than an influential rock and roll album. It was a catalyst. It was the first match. It was that first spark that introduced fire. It was the wheel. It was communication. It became a cornerstone for so much of what entertainment is and has become and what will become. I'm not saying that music didn't exist before this album, and I'm not saying that music didn't have exciting moments or you know, big media frenzies before that, but there was something about this album and these four guys and the music they created that it just brought out this universal magical appeal that was meant to transcend time, whether they realized it or not. And it'll probably transcend humanity at some point. You know, this music will exist long after we're all dead and gone. We're forever in debt to the magnitude of a piece of plastic. And I think that says more than what I can fully put into words. This album is just truly special. You know, for a lot of people, this was their introduction to the Beatles and their introduction to music and following a band through their transitions and trusting them and believing in them. And when they took a left turn, you went with them. It wasn't like, oh, I don't like what they're doing anymore. You may have been a little uncertain at first, but then you realize that, you know what, they've been right before. I'm going to go with them. You know, this was one of the first bands I think people put their faith into and said, you know what, if you do something, I'll figure it out with you and go down that road. And that was a groundwork that really was influential for almost every other band ever after that. There's been so many parodies of this album cover. There's been so many parodies of what it was like to be in A Hard Day's Night. There was TV shows about it. There's been movies about it. There's been parody bands about the Beatles. I mean, it's just this monumental thing that all started with this album. So, again, it's one of those things where I can score it on a number of different levels, a number of different types of scoring. But, you know, for the songs themselves, 10 out of 10. It's a grand slam of an album. I love the track selection on this thing. It's just phenomenal. It's a greatest hits album. And then, you know, obviously for its appeal to the world and infinity, also a 10 out of 10. 53 years, man. You look pretty good for being 53 years old. That's it. Meet the Beatles on Capitol Records. Words sometimes fail me to express how amazing I think this album is and how fun it is and exciting it is. You know, music that was made so long ago, but also not so long ago, and how important it still is. Not a lot of people around these days will be able to put out music that will last and be as influential and important as this music. And I'm not saying there isn't bad music these days. I'm saying that, like, there was just a magic about this group That's all that there was. Sometimes you get lucky and sometimes the timing is right. Whew, that was fun. My name is Giggens. This has been The Beatles. Meet the Beatles on Capitol Records, January 20th, 1964. It was on the charts, I think, at number 1 for 11 weeks, only to be taken off that spot by their second album. So, again, pretty freaking cool, man. That's it. My name is Giggens. This has been Album Reviews. Thank you so much for watching, you guys, and I'll see you in the next video. See ya.